What do you believe are the biggest constraints in most people finding freedom in their life?
You do need money. We can't deny that. It's like Dave Meltzer says as well, make a lot of money, have a lot of fun, and help a lot of people.
That shift for us in our world has been a shift into impact over income.
People are chasing the dollar and they're not chasing the freedom.
I would tell you that was the most profound shift for me, is when I realized that I was chasing money and it cost me who I was.
The pursuit of happiness should not come through financial means. It should come from your soul. What's she going to school? What's she going to do for school? And we did try to follow like an online program. It was a bit hit or miss, but I say to people all the time, I'm like, she learned the most when we weren't trying to teach her anything.
Welcome back, everybody, to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here by now. I love to tell the real, raw stories of some of the most impactful people on this planet. Today, our guest is no different. You know, he's a traveler. He's an adventurer. He's been on over 90 countries. He's traveled his motorcycle across the world. He's a world-renowned photographer and just has incredible heart. He runs foundations. He's a father, and he's focused on impact. The couple of conversations I've had with him so far, his depth is very apparent. His authenticity is apparent, and I'm super excited to be jumping in with you today, Todd.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here, bud.
So I asked you this question on our other show, and it's the only question that I ask every guest on both shows, which is this: who are you in your words?
Great question. Yeah, this is awesome because it's not like you're ripping your bio off LinkedIn, right? Well, I'm a dreamer. I'm a dreamer who also takes action to make sure those dreams become reality, come to fruition. I'm a life lover. I'm a citizen of the world. As you said, I love to travel. It's probably the one thing that means the most to me. I'm aware of many different hats, both professionally and in my life pursuits. And I guess I'm a bit of a Swiss Army knife in terms of outdoor pursuits and things that I like to do to that really keeps me ticking. So yeah, I'm a bit of a hard nut to crack sometimes. When you crack me open, it's wide open.
Man, I appreciate that answer for lots of reasons. I love the dreamer followed by action. I'm going to come back to that in just a second, but I want to play with the other way you described yourself as kind of a Swiss Army knife. What are the tools that you utilize within your Swiss Army knife as you describe yourself as it relates to outdoor adventures? Like what are the ones you access most regularly?
Well, you know, it's important to access inspiration from others, I think. And, you know, really, because I'm in the outdoor industry, there's so many of them to draw from. And I have so many different interests, you know, whether it's paddling or motorcycle travel or even playing golf. Like, I love to just tap into what other people are doing, ask them for help, because that's one thing that has gotten me to where I am in my life, and it started a bit late, which was asking for help. So I try to tap into that. And then other stuff is just like improving on what you already have in the belt, sharpening your knives and keeping things sharp. And you know, like, time marches on and our bodies march on, but if we really stay focused and disciplined and we're consistent with any of our pursuits, it'll pay off.
Yeah. So when in your life do you remember identifying as a dreamer first? And what were some of those early dreams that you started to chase through action?
Well, I guess that's a really great question. I think probably when I was about 13 years old, when I first fell in love, and it was not with a girl, it was with the game of golf. I lived about 5-minute bike ride away from the golf course, so I got a job there, you know, scrubbing clubs and picking the range and all that stuff. And the dream started when I was playing golf, because not only does golf kind of instill all these values in you, but the skill set that you need to succeed is the learning curve is crazy, right? But when you're in that age, you sort of tackle everything with reckless abandon. And you go for it, right? And that's kind of my motto in life, is those 3 words: go for it. So when I was, you know, when you're walking for 4 hours, you also have a lot of time to think. right? That's why I like motorcycle travel, because you have a lot of time to think in your helmet, behind your head, like what's going on. So yeah, when the dream was to like become a professional golfer, and the action was spending hours and hours and hours practicing and playing, and that was it.
And you ultimately did become a professional golfer, correct?
I did ultimately. I became a golf professional.
Okay.
I played professionally a few different, certain tournaments. We had to play a certain number of rounds to keep your card and that kind of stuff. But there is a difference between professional golfer and golf professional. So I did, my dream wasn't quite high enough, I guess, to reach that realm, because you have to enter another whole level of dedication to hit that. Those guys are pretty damn good. So I was never that good, but I chose to, go the other route, which is fine. There's no regrets there.
It's interesting the way you describe that. It's very similar to the tennis world. And I would tell you that I was a tennis pro, but I wasn't a professional tennis player. Right. So I was in a position where I understood the mechanics of the game, had an ability to teach others, instruct others, really understood form, could really help bring others into it. But I was never good enough to make money playing myself. I would have never cracked the top 100 in the world. And that's really what's required. And so I love the distinction even in how you separated that, because you ultimately did allow yourself to become a golf professional, but you weren't playing professionally. And that's a really interesting piece. It takes me back to one of the original stories that I used to discuss around the concept of I am statements. And does the name Aeneas Williams mean anything to you?
No.
Okay, so I'll tell this in a really abbreviated sense, but why do I say this? It's really cool how you identified, maybe I didn't dream big enough. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I want to be really clear when I say this. I think you had exactly the dream that was meant for you, and that's what you chased. Aeneas Williams has one of these where he wrote down in a journal way back in college. He said, I am someone who will lead my football team to the Super Bowl. He did that. Wow. They did not win. He was a captain on the team, and they did not win the Super Bowl. And after he didn't win, he said almost exactly what you said. He said, I didn't set my eyesight high enough. I should have said, I'm going to win the Super Bowl. Right. And so the concept of what we can manifest through our dreams and the specificity to the words that we utilize in those dreams only come to fruition with intentional aligned action. And you clearly learned that early. So thank you for going there with us. What got the travel bug inside of you, and what inspired the initial desire to start traveling the world and experiencing outdoors in so many ways that you have?
Yeah, well, that was, my travel was inspired by my brother, because he was, straight out of high school, he went to Nepal, and he was going through a bit of a time in his life when he was quite rebellious. He was lashing out at the world, and travel really brought in a sense of, I think, calm into his spirit. And just what travel does to you, even just from a standpoint of changing your outlook on life from meeting different people and other cultures. So this was back in my golf pro days. I used to save every single penny of money that I earned from teaching lessons. I really like the teaching part of golf. And I used to go away for 4 to 5 months every winter season by myself to, different places. And then, when you start feeding your soul with different cultures, different languages, different foods, and you can kind of escape your reality for a bit and go into a whole nother realm. Like, you can be whoever you want to be when you're traveling. There's no one judging you. There's no one saying you got to do this way or that way. You're just like, you're on your own, and you're discovering yourself through the act of travel. And I think I just became addicted to that.
I appreciate even utilizing the framework of your brother to kind of inspire your approach. I also kind of want to hone in on one of the things you specifically said there, because I think it's extremely powerful. I would tell you that there are many people in this world that may identify, or others might identify them as somewhat of a nomad, right? People who are literally up and moving and traveling in a whole variety of ways. And what you just said is you can kind of be whoever you are, and you get to escape the judgment and criticism that might exist in your normative life. And so I'm curious, going back to that time, what were the criticism and judgments that you were experiencing in your day-to-day life that you found yourself able to escape when you were on the road?
Yeah, I always felt that judgment was a thing that was sort of maybe holding me back from being, really who I was. I'm quite a gregarious guy. I'm friendly. I'm all of that. I never had a problem with that, but it was just like, kind of minor things. Like one time, there was this time I remember in grade 6 or grade 5 or grade 6, and somebody kind of teased me for what I had in my lunch, as ridiculous as that sounds. So from that day on, I would always try to like hide it from myself and not show anybody else. I was scared to, kind of just show them what I had for lunch, as ridiculous as that sounds, but it kind of carries over into different things. People judge you for how your hair is or what your clothes are like, or all those, superfluous, ridiculous surface things that kind of affect your psyche in that way. But when you go traveling, that's gone in an instant. As soon as you land, there's nobody, you're by yourself, especially when you're traveling solo. There's nobody to have to make a plan with. There's nobody who's, going to judge why you want to go to this place and what you want to do. You're just on your own program. You can work it out. And that was quite liberating for me.
Yeah. Well, I know you say as silly as it sounds, but I'm often known as the garbage man because we help people identify and remove the trash from their past that continues to show up and keep them stuck. And it's often little micro moments like what you just described, right? It's the judgment and criticism received because you've got something in the lunch that you got teased for, or your dad and how he looked at you when you loaded the dishwasher incorrectly, or right, like any number of things that then creates these belief systems and levels of self-preservation and protection that start to disconnect us in this world. Travel, I believe, is one of the greatest ways to connect with ourselves and the broader element of our work, right? And I think the perspective that can be gained through travel is almost second to none, but not in the traditional form of just touristic travel, right? Actually ingraining and immersing yourself within a culture. You identify as a humanitarian. I'd love to know, how do you define being a humanitarian, and when did that become a part of your self-identity?
That became a part of my identity when my brother and I had traveled through Africa. He contracted cerebral malaria and he died in 4.5 days. So I went from having the very, very high epitome of freedom in my life to the absolute depths of despair and extreme guilt in 4.5 days. So years later, I'm just going to fast forward a bit, when I met my wife now, Christina, and Africa was calling me back. And I knew that because when you're traveling, so many people do so many things for you that I really wanted to have some way to give back. Like, I just wanted to do something. Like, if we go back to Africa, what purpose can we serve? So we decided to join forces with this great organization called the Against Malaria Foundation. And we understood that having a mosquito net cover your kid's bed greatly reduces the chances of them getting malaria. And it's mostly in kids under 5. And a lot of people who live in remote areas do not have access, do not have the education to even understand what a net does or is. So our mission was to go to Africa, armed with mosquito nets, and to not only deliver mosquito nets to remote villages and places that we were going to reach with our motorcycles, but to chip in and help with these grander scale mosquito net distribution projects that they had in several different countries. So the organization was amazing. It was basically, they make a web page for you. People go to that web page. Ours was called Motos Against Malaria. So people can pledge and donate, and you never see the money. It just goes directly to the nets. And then we really want to do that groundwork of helping out. So that was really where, got almost bit by that humanitarian bug. And when you see So I remember this so vividly that someone, when we first started giving a net into this one school, this girl came up to us and said, so sincerely, she said, "Thank you. Now I can sleep better at night and study better in the day." And I never even thought about that. I always thought it was just like, preventing you from getting malaria. But she was like, having a mosquito buzz around your head all night long, you're not going to sleep at all, right? So even just that. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell from me on the humanitarian side. And I just want to keep it going. It's grown from there into a new foundation that we've started involving kids and education and travel, because that's really what we want. We want kids to see the world.
I really appreciate where you took that answer and the specific comment of that little girl, right? The impact of our resources that we have access to, what I would consider in North America, right? America, Canada, right? Some of the more kind of established countries, we really kind of lose perspective of how far it can go in other places. My wife and I have adopted, I say adopted because that's the only language I have with the organization we've worked with, but we've got these two girls that we've basically adopted in Uganda as a part of an organization that's designed, basically the adoption is essentially to give them educational resources, right? There are the way the schooling system works and the way the medical system works in certain parts of Africa, they wouldn't have access to it without certain resources. But where am I going with this? We have the chance to send them birthday presents and different things as well. And so for 4 or 5 years, we've communicated and started to build these relationships. And the very first time we did it, I think we sent over $50, right? $50, which to us was like, man, this didn't seem like that much, wasn't that big of a deal. But what ended up happening as a result of it was we got a response back from her, which was a picture. And the picture was of the goat that she purchased for her family, the clothes, the rice, the thing, like the $50 genuinely amplified her entire family's ability to eat and have some more consistency, because they could make cheese, they could make butter, they could do different things with this goat, right? The $50 provided livelihood for her. We were thinking, oh, she's going to go get herself a couple of things wherever that would be. And I know that might sound naive on our part, but even the ability for someone to be able to sleep so they can study better during the day, education is so critically important. I'm grateful that you also shared what you did about your brother. If you're okay with it, I'd like to take you back to that moment, because I have some curiosity and questions around just how that happened. I mean, to contract malaria and 4.5 days later lose your brother. Were you there with him when this happened? Was this something you learned about? How did that go down, and how did it affect you immediately?
Yeah, I was with him. We had, like I said before, I had traveled extensively by myself, and so had Sean in that span of 8 or 9 years. And we're brothers. We should be traveling together. So we chose South Africa to meet up. He was big into motorcycles and riding bikes at that time. And he's like, we should buy motorbikes and do a big loop through Southern Africa for 4 months. And at the time, that was back in my golf pro days, I was like, wow, okay, that's a lot to think about, right? So anyways, we did it. We bought the bikes, we went for it. We saw a travel nurse just before we were going to go. And she said, okay, there's malaria in certain parts of where you're going to go. This is what we recommend. And at the time, it was this anti-malarial known as Larium, which is known in traveler circles as Scarium, because there's been reported psychotic episodes and really bad dreams and crazy things like that. And being naive 26, 27-year-olds, I was 27, he was 29 at the time. We're it's classic, oh, it won't happen to us. Let's just, we'll wear long sleeves and pants at night and whatever. But I don't even know where it happened, but it was somewhere, I think, in Mozambique, where he got bit by a Anopheles female mosquito, and I didn't. Took him to the health clinic because he was feeling really bad. And boom, they said, yeah, you've got malaria. We've got him we've got quinine going through his system for 24 hours in the IV. After then, he should be okay. But with cerebral malaria, if you catch it too late, that's when it's too late.
Yeah.
Right. And it just spreads to all your. So I was in that. There was that whole hospital room drama. If you have a chance to check out my book, Inside the Belly of an Elephant, it's all in there. And it affected me. Like I was like ruined. I was like, I didn't know what to do because I was racked by guilt because it could have been prevented. Like I could have prevented it. Right. So it was that guilt stayed with me for quite a while. And I didn't even know what it was, but from doing a few studies and things like that, I learned that it was survivor's guilt. It was like, why am I alive and he's not?
Yeah.
Right. So I was racked with guilt for a long time until I actually started traveling again, and I met Christina, and we set off to kind of keep his legacy alive because he wanted to come back to Canada, buy bikes, and head down to South America, which is exactly what we did. And we spread his ashes along the way, and that's all in the book too. So.
Well, I know that we've talked about your book before, and I have not had a chance to dig into it and read it yet, but I am going to because I want to understand more about your story. And thank you for sharing what you did. I've got a brother that's 14 months older than me. And, I still to this day view him as one of the most solid connections that I've had in my life, right? And one of my best friends. We've done a lot of things together. We're going to do more together. But for you to be in a foreign country, right, traveling and experiencing, and then have to be the one to be alongside your brother for all of that, it's profound. And the impact and loss and grieving, and even what you just said, survivor's guilt, is real. What you've done with that, though, is pretty incredible, right? You obviously found a way to live through his legacy and spread his ashes, but the foundation that you referenced a few minutes ago is the Rise and Sean Foundation, and it's in honor of your brother, correct?
Correct. Yeah, he never had kids. He was 29 when he was 29 single when he passed away. But he was one of those travelers that really loved to engage with kids, and he was pretty comical and out there, so the kids just loved him, right? And for us, it was more about starting this foundation so that kids in these villages that don't ever go 100 kilometers outside of their village, and they're, some spend their lives in there, right? So we really knew because how much travel had affected us and what it had done for us, that we wanted to just spread this as much as we could. So we started a foundation. At the time, it was called the Sean Lawson Young Travelers Foundation, but that was a bit of an earful, so we just changed it to Rise and Sean. And what we do is we take school kids, usually aged 8 to 12. That's kind of the sweet spot, and we take them on extended educational outdoor-based field trips that are within like a 4-hour radius or 4 or 5 hour radius of their village, and we get them out. We rent a van, we rent a bus, we bring teachers, we bring adult chaperones, we bring cooks and everything, and we just hit the road. And these kids, like, you don't even have to do anything or teach them anything. Right away, as soon as they stare out that window, they're learning, right? When we were in Uganda, we did one up to Murchison Falls, and in the first hour, we had a flat tire, right? So it's like the classic example of, it's not an adventure till shit hits the fan, right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that, it's just like, okay, it's super hot. We got to deal with all these, get these kids into some shade and, make them help change this tire and learn all about like when there's a bump in the road, you deal with it and then you move on. So yeah, our foundation, it's just a small little grassroots foundation. It's going to grow. It's going to be amazing. And, we just did a trip in India. Normally we take about 12 kids. In India, we took 30. And
wow.
It was pretty cool. We took them caving, and you could pick their jaws up off the floor. Like, these kids have never experienced what a cave is like. And it was just amazing, and swimming. And then we come back in the afternoon, and the teacher will teach them, will base their lesson plan around what they learned that day.
Beautiful.
So, and then we play games and stuff and 3-legged races and water balloon fights, and we keep it super fun, but it's educational. At the end, there's just like, I'm getting choked up right now, but it's like everybody you can see how affected they are by the experience and by what it meant for them.
Yeah.
What we meant for them and what they meant to us. So it's pretty powerful.
Thank you for showing your raw emotion as well. I believe that true strength hides behind vulnerability, and I'm grateful that you're comfortable enough to share in our conversation something that feels so personal and real and emotional. If you had to look back at the kids that you've worked with, I highly doubt you can pick one, but I would love it if you could give maybe an example or a small case study of the impact on maybe one or a couple of the kids that you've done some of these excursions with, and what has happened as a ripple effect as a result of your time with them.
Yeah. So the first one we did was in Uganda in 2008. And this was before social media for us anyways. And, time passed along. We did another one in Belize. And then I reached out, some kids just found us on Facebook, reached out to me. This one girl in particular that we took with Uganda. So this was like, 7 years later or whatever. She was a, young, thriving teenager. And I asked her for do you know what a testimonial is? And would you mind writing one about your experience if you can remember that? And she said, sure, no problem. So 2 days later, she wrote this. It was like a huge letter. And it was awesome. But the one real telling point, or the one main experience that she drew from it, was that she wasn't able to understand what it was like to dream big, to get yourself out there. And, beyond those borders of where you live, there's a whole other world happening.
Yeah.
There's people doing things. And, if you want to become a game warden, you can do that. If you want to become a head chef at this resort, you can do that. If you want to become a pilot, you can do that. Like, dream big and do that. And I think just that experience, sometimes that doesn't even have anything to do with travel, but just that experience of opening her mind really, really helped. And now she's in nursing school. She's going to become a nurse, which is amazing.
Beautiful.
So yeah, it's just like, the whole goal is just to light a spark in those kids, let them know that they can do anything that they want, and we'll help them get there.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
You've been to over 90 countries. What?
80, over 80.
Over 80.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, or we were close, but
yeah.
But either way, 80 countries, 90 countries, that's a lot. Okay. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
Of the 80 countries that you have experienced, the 6 continents that you've been a part of, what are the top 2 or 3 experiences that you would attribute to be the most foundational in shaping who you are today?
Well, one experience comes to mind, and that was when Christina and I were in Southern Bolivia. And this, keep in mind, this is before GPS, before cell phone. We didn't have any of that stuff, right? We just had a paper map. And the paper map didn't really have this road on it. Like, our only goal in that trip was to visit every country in mainland Latin America, and there's 23 of them, and we did that. And some of it was kind of sketchy sometimes. We're like, okay, the bikes are running fine, we're strong and healthy and able to do this, we're in good spirits, let's try to find our way into Paraguay. So we went into Paraguay. The guy previous, when we were going over the maps in his bar, he said, it's been raining for about 2 or 3 weeks. He's like, I probably wouldn't go that way, but you can, there is a road. I just don't know what kind of shape it's in.
Okay.
So we started traveling down this road, and we come up to this series after series after series of giant mud puddles. and the greasiest mud that you could imagine. We dropped our bikes, like it seemed like it was like every minute, because you just couldn't grip, and you were soaked to the bone and covered in mud. And there's nothing you can do. You can't go back because you're gonna run out of gas if you try to go back. There's probably no one gonna come. We haven't seen any vehicles at all. It was like, holy crap. And then at this one point I had a problem like this. The gear shift lever on my bike snapped off. So I'm like, oh my God, we're screwed. Like if I can't get the bike into gear, we can't go.
Yeah.
So we ended up spending the night, and just like, I remember we had a fight that night because we were hungry and we didn't know what to do. And Christina was like, why do we always have to go like, this way? We could have taken another way. And so anyways, we call them road angels, and they always come along. And this road angel was this farmer named Alejandro. And he got stuck in this muck. We helped push his Jeep out. And then he basically pulled my bike with a rope behind his Jeep to it was like probably 10 or 12 slow kilometers, dodgy, to his house. And then we basically went through his entire garage with a fine-tooth combing, looking for one tiny little screw that would fit into my thing. And we got it fixed, and we went through. But that was like, I really learned about what it's like to persevere. All that shit's going to get thrown in your way, and you got to persevere, and you just have to keep going.
Yeah. I love that you call Alejandro and others like that a road angel, right? Like, I mean, that really is, it's like a little wink from a little wink from the universe, the source, God, whatever word you identify with. It's always beautiful when you get a little saving grace in there. You have a real affinity for storytelling, right? And you've been a writer and a photographer for years. You obviously are still utilizing some of those skill sets in your current role and position as the publisher of Canada's Mountain Life Media. All of that said, you have been in multiple areas across the world, and you've been in grass huts, you've been on the Serengeti, you've been to some of the most remote, crazy parts in the world. What is one or two conversations that you've had with locals in any of those experiences that shifted your perspective most powerfully?
I think it's the fact that you can overcome fear by just doing something. Because a lot of times when we rocked up to these remote villages or areas, they were like quite worried for us. They were like, aren't you, in the classic African, they say, are you not fearing going out, like driving like this, and they can't really understand us just putting yourself out there and traveling for the sake to travel, right? So, but if if we were to read the news or watch the news every day, you wouldn't leave your couch because you'd be so scared to go out in the world, right? But when you get out there, because people are like, oh, you're going to get robbed, you're going to get held at gunpoint, this is all going to happen to you, right? Which some of that did. But 99% of the time, people are good. People want you to succeed. People want to help you. And that's the main thing. Like the help factor when you're traveling as an independent adventure travel, and not like you said, like a tourist, it's incredible the lengths that people will go to help you out. Like there will literally be their last plate of rice, and they will offer it to you first. And, because that's what they know, and that's what they do, and that's how they receive you. So that was one of, just overcoming fear by doing it, going it. It's that same adage, like you don't know unless you go, right?
Yeah. You've referenced this kind of concept of asking for help, and you identified it early as something that you're learning to do and has been strong, but you also identified it as one of your biggest problems in life and business because it has been a challenge for you. What do you think is the root of your struggle to ask for help historically? And how did you start to shift that and start to get better at asking for help and open yourself to receive?
Yeah, I think it's because I always thought that I should do
Yeah.
something myself, right? I always, and sometimes it was like when you get to that certain level of professionalism and your skills start to grow, you probably do have a bit too much ego in there and think that you can do it better than someone else, right? So why ask for help if you can do it better by yourself? And then and then that cycle starts to take over. And, I even said this to my business partners the other day. It's like, hey guys, I need some help because I'm going back into my old way of like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that. And I'll bring all this stuff on. And then I'm unwarranted. Resenting you guys is my fault because I think that you're not doing it because I'm doing it and not asking for help. So, working with my coach, our colleague David Meltzer, he is really big on asking for help. He's helped me to kind of always look and seek help, which has helped me in my current endeavor with Rise Outdoor big time.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that you brought him up as well. I would tell you that his words 3 or 4 years ago hit me between the eyeballs as a 2x4 and were there solely to help me realize that I was really shitty at receiving. And it was only in the times that I had perception that it would benefit me, right? Anytime it was to benefit somebody else, I'd help and I would jump in and I would ask for anything. But if I thought it was going to impact me, and so mine was in a different capacity of it. So I appreciate how you even approached that. You said should. I felt like I should have been doing this. Should's a shame-based word, right? It implies whoever you are, whatever you're doing, it's not good enough. Yet we should all over ourselves. And that's one of the words that starts to funnel us into the box that the world has told us who to be versus us being able to actually establish who we are. You, through action and exploration, have consistently allowed yourself to shift your perspective and evolve as a human being. It's something that you've done regularly and consistently, but you've also documented a whole variety of this through your journeys. And so I would ask if there was a lesson that you were able to encapsulate in either a piece of writing or in one of the pictures that you've taken. What would the most profound lesson be from a moment you've captured and the story you've told about it afterwards?
Wow, that is, can you say that again?
I'll try. Sometimes it only comes out one way. Sometimes it only comes out once. Yeah, I think what I asked was, could you articulate or identify either a piece of writing or a picture that captured a moment in time? And what was the story that you were telling in that moment that led to one of your largest lessons in life?
Wow. Well, I'm not sure I can link that together, but I will try. I mean, photography was probably like my second love. I really fell in love with photography. I fell in love with the documentarians, people like David Allen Harvey and these Mike Nichols and these Nat Geo guys that really got it. Like they got the stories 1,000 words. It's like there's an old saying in photojournalism, F8 and be there, right? It's like, it doesn't matter about the technical perfection of what's going on in the photograph. It matters about what's going on in the photograph from a story perspective, right? So I took a photograph one time when I was in photography school, and it was quite a simple image of a kiteboarder boosting off this wave. The kite was in like a perfect line like that. The wave was in a perfect line. He was in the thing. And I actually got awarded the photograph of the year for the shot. And it was quite a simple thing. And it wasn't like a photojournalistic shot, but what it said to me was freedom. And freedom kind of drives my life. It's my benchmark for success. Like if I'm free to do things that I love to do, then I'm successful as can be. So if I can link those two together, it'd be that photo. It was like that. It was a very simple image. Yeah. It just said freedom. And that's what I would say about it.
I love that. You described a little bit about what freedom means to you as it relates to being free to do the things that you want, but broader than that, what does freedom mean to you, and where in your life are you still seeking freedom, if any?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because seek freedom is actually the tagline for my new brand that I'm
I love it.
working on. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Just for the listeners, that was a complete coincidence. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So I think people should seek freedom more often. Like, look for it. Look where you in your life that you can, take advantage of either your situation or what you want to do with your life in terms of your aspirations, your dreams, your pursuits, your goals, and look for ways, because freedom is the root of everything. Like, we are free when we leave, when we enter this world. We should be free when we leave it too. So for me, freedom means the ability to do what you want, when you want to do it, and to be able to share that with other people too.
What do you believe are the biggest constraints in most people finding freedom in their life?
Money. People are chasing the dollar and they're not chasing the freedom. You'd have a much happier life if you looked at that job application and it said, oh, there's a 4-day work week, but you get paid a little bit less, rather than, oh, you got to work 6 days a week, and you're going to make a lot of money, right? I really think that's it. I think it's just the pursuit of happiness should not come through financial means. It should come from your soul.
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you that was the most profound shift for me, is when I realized that I was chasing money and it cost me who I was, right? That was a big shift about 12 years ago. And it was something that was very, very profound. And it took a lot of years to unwind some of the patterns that I'd created as a result of it. It sounds to some degree, just based on how you've lived your life, that you've always prioritized freedom over the dollar. Would you say that that's an accurate statement?
That is an accurate statement. Yeah. I mean, to some extent, you do need money. If you
I agree.
Do like really cool, like there's no question about it. We can't deny that. But it's like Dave Meltzer says as well: make a lot of money, have a lot of fun, and help a lot of people. Right.
Yep.
And that rings true. Because if I can make more money, funnel it into my foundation, and help more people, that would be amazing. Right? I want to keep having fun, because fun is freedom. When you're having fun out there, you're not thinking about anything else. You're not thinking about the bills and the taxes and the blah, 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 blah. Right? You're out there. If you're skiing, you're free as can be. You're going bombing downhill, and that's fun as. You got a smile on your face, and it fills you up. It fills your soul. It's not going to fill, it's not going to fill your wallet, but who cares?
Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, I think money just amplifies, right? It just amplifies whoever you are. I think it does provide resources. True. I think that it is an energy that we can benefit from and provide lots of fun, lots of freedom, lots of help to others with it, right? But it's just like many other mediums too. It's a tool that's a part of a bigger picture. And I've seen money ruin people just as quickly as it's helped them actually create impact. And it all comes down to the intent. I agree. If we prioritize freedom over financial, it changes the dynamic. And it allows us to really focus on what's important. That shift for us in our world has been a shift into impact over income, right? The more I chase impact, the more income is not a variable, because it follows the impact. And it also allows me to live the life that I want based on my terms. And that's something that's very important for me, is this concept of probably my greatest pet peeve in life is this idea of unlived potential. And unlived potential is ultimately whenever people, to your point, don't take action and step into the opportunities to explore within their lives. Based on all the places that you've traveled, go ahead. It looks like you're about to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I turned 47, I'm 51 now, I realized that I was not living up to my potential. I had a book in me. I started the book. There was chapters here and chapters there, and notes everywhere and stuff. But I realized that get this book out there. Like, do the things that you want to do, and because regret is an expensive road to go down. So realizing the pursuit of your potential is fun as well, and that's quite liberating to me. Is like, yes, I'm doing these things that I want to do. I'm doing these things to make an impact in other people's lives if I can. Even what we do with mountain life and spreading that word of the love and the connection that the mountains bring to us and to our soul, and everything in terms of that. It's all freedom to me. Like, you have, correct me if I'm wrong, but is there a phoenix that you've got tattooed on your arm somewhere?
Yeah, there's a phoenix tattoo right here. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So the phoenix is in my logo. It's a
beautiful
representation of the phoenix, and that's what, for me, the phoenix is a representation for anyone who's been at the lowest of their low, and they can rise to whatever level, wherever they want to be in life. We've all been there, sometimes multiple times, or you go down dips and valleys, right? You're in there, but phoenix rising, man, you tap into what's really and truly inside you, what drives you, and you can just ascend and rise like that phoenix,
Yeah. How'd you know I had a phoenix tattoo?
I was listening to one of your podcasts and you mentioned it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It doesn't come up very often, which is why it surprised me when you brought it up. I was like, man, all right. It is interesting. I mean, obviously, given some of the things that I've been through with my injury, to my arm and everything, I often say that my scars are the stories that were chosen for me. My tattoos are the stories I chose for myself. And cool. The phoenix is representative. It's embedded even in what you just said. I mean, a phoenix bird can actually burn itself down into its ashes and rise again time and time and time and time and time and time again. Right. And so the reality of it is it becomes a perpetual evolution of self. I love that it's embedded in your logo as well. And obviously there's some clear overlap in the way that we view the world. With everywhere that you have traveled, with this maybe 4-year journey of realizing you weren't on your potential and reaching out to go further, what's left for you? Where do you still desire to adventure, and where do you still desire to grow?
Well, metaphorically, I desire to grow in terms of how much of my potential can I realize? And I don't think your potential probably grows.
I agree.
As you grow, and you're never going to reach it.
I agree.
But it's there. It's the carrot that's dangling, right? So I'm happy still chasing that and pursuing that, because I know that there's only good that's going to come from that. If I keep my mind and my soul pure and I want to help people, then there's only good that's going to come out of that. There's only fun and freedom and more of that stuff, right? In terms of physically and places I want to go to, I would love to go to Mongolia. It's a bit of an out there place. Haven't been back to Mexico in a number of years, so I'd like to go there. Africa, I'll definitely. My daughter is an animal lover, so we will for sure 100% go back to Africa. I'd love her to, she's been kind of asking about volunteering at different places and stuff like that, so I think that's really cool. So yeah, but I just want to keep going, man. Like I said, my motto in life is go for it. So I'm just going to keep going for it. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, here's the thing. You're right. We don't ever reach our potential except within maybe a moment. But as soon as we've reached our potential, it expands, right? Yeah. And that's what's really cool. It's this concept of we can wake up in the morning and decide that we're going to walk to the horizon. We never actually get to the horizon line, right? We'll walk 10 miles and we don't get to the horizon line. It keeps moving out. It's the same thing with our opportunity and growth. And I love how grounded you are in that. You've referenced your daughter a few times, and it's something that I can tell is extremely important to you. And it's something that I would say is very, very strong as it relates to your current identity. What was your initial intent, or what is your intent today in terms of the handful of lessons that you hope to ingrain in your daughter before she's an adult?
Yeah, well, I think just be a kind person, have integrity. Every day when she walks out the door, I tell her, do something good for somebody today, or make their day. Do your good deed, right? And often she'll come back and say, "Oh, I helped these little girls. They were having, problem with whatever in the playground, and I helped them." And just if we can keep adding onto those things, and then the world and the adventure that comes with travel. My wife and I want her to introduce her to this insanely crazy, awesome world of adventure motorcycle travel. So just last year, well, from 2022 to 2023, we went on a year-long adventure motorcycle trip from Ireland to India and back all the way to Portugal, because we knew it was just at that time. She was 10 years old at the time. We knew what she was going to get from it. And we knew that she would learn more from this than she would from being a year in school. You know, everyone was really concerned about, oh, is she going to school? What's she going to do for school? All this. And we did try to follow like an online program. It was a bit hit or miss, but I say to people all the time, I'm like, she learned the most when we weren't trying to teach her anything.
That's right.
You know,
10 out of 10 times I will put my kids into experiential learning over structured learning.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a difference.
It completely changes it. What would your daughter say about you?
She'd probably say that, she would probably say, Dad, I like the way you live your life. At least I hope she would say that, maybe, you know, or even Dad, I like the person you are. That would mean more to me than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think your brother would say if he knew all of what you've accomplished in his honor?
I don't know, man. He'd probably be speechless. He wasn't really it took take a lot to make Sean speechless, but he would be pretty stoked. Yeah. He'd be stoked that his legacy was being his legacy of travel was being carried on as it is. And, you know, for him, for him to be on the cover of the book, that's him there.
Yeah.
Like, he would love that. Yeah. So yeah, he'd be stoked.
That's awesome, man. I mean, you've really put a lot of intent into carrying on the legacy of him, of your and his relationship, but more broadly of just the spirit of adventure, exploration, and seeking freedom, right? Chasing dreams and following through with action. You've lived your life that way, and it's inspiring to witness. It's cool to see all of the places that you've been and the things that you've done, and yet I also feel like you're just getting started, my friend.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, follow you, get inside the belly of the elephant, find ways to support the Rise and Sean Foundation? I want to make sure that all of our listeners have a chance to tap into so much of what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for asking. riseandsean.foundation. Sean is SEAN. On Instagram, you can find me at freedom.life, and that's where a lot of our family travels are and a lot of that travel stuff. On Instagram, Inside the Belly of an Elephant. The book is available everywhere, so you can just Google that and Mr. Amazon will come to your doorstep. And then Mountain Life Media as well.
Beautiful, my friend. I have really, really enjoyed our time together, our conversation, and you've embedded so many lessons. You've shown emotion, you've shown the spectrum of the human experience, and it's been a beautiful experience just to be with you. You've talked about lessons, but I'd love it if you could close with kind of a closing thought for our audience on what you want to stick the most.
Yes. I would just say, get out of your own way and just believe in yourself. It's such a cliched kind of thing to say, but believe in yourself, because you are a powerful being. You probably don't realize it, but trust yourself, believe in yourself, and just go for it, man. Whatever you want to do, go for it.
Todd, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hey, thank you, man. You're really good at this, and I had a great time. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. And for those of you that just watched Todd flip open his lid and jump in, we saw the stories that have shaped his life, the dreams that he's chased, the actions that have been aligned for him to be able to accomplish it, the loss that led to impact and a legacy that's going to carry on well beyond this lifetime. He's laying seeds and laying a foundation literally to be able to give experiential learning access to broader parts of the world. But once you learn to believe in yourself, anything is possible. The only way that you'll fully get there, though, is if you're going to flip open your lid and scan your can. What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com.